Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a very, very special episode of The Fifth Dimension. For this episode, we're going to be tackling a very super spicy subject when it comes to the character of Terra from Kingdom Hearts. Now, for this analysis, for this discussion, for this debate, we had to bring in someone from the other side when it comes to loving the character that is Terra. Everyone, please welcome Rhelaza. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on here.
Oh no, thank you so much for coming on out. I am really, really excited to have this discussion with you.
Yeah, totally. Same here. I'm excited to word vomit about how much I love this character.
And that is completely granted and completely fair. Now, a couple of things before I literally throw the floor over to Rhelaza, because I'm sure she has a lot to say. We have to get some things out of the air. There's three main things. One, if you are a Terra stan and you're here in the stream, you're probably going to hear a lot of things you do not want me to say about Terra, and you might think that I'm an asshole. Now, I assure you, 100% I don't care. Now, two, when it comes to Terra's character, and if you love him or not, that is literally irrelevant to the point of the discussion when it comes to Terra. What I mean by that is if you love Terra, I'm not going to look at you differently if you were to hate him or not. I personally can't stand the character and I have my reasons for doing so. But I'm not saying that this character is a badly written character or you shouldn't love this character. If you say, oh, I love Terra, then I'd be like, oh, okay, that's cool. Unfortunate, but cool. That's number two. Number three, for those that are thinking they're coming to the stream that there's going to be like a bloody brawl of discussion of words and something that's going to be really, really wild, I hate to disappoint you, but this is going to be a very civil discussion because Rhelaza is a very genuine person, and I would not want to put her in a situation that would make like her or me feel uncomfortable, or anyone else in this chat to feel uncomfortable when it comes to discussing Terra's points. But that being said, I have a lot to say about Terra, but we are going to get this show started by throwing the ball over to Rhelaza. So tell me how you feel about Terra, and what do you feel about those that you believe to see him as underrated or overly hated?
Great. So for me, part of the reason why I really love Terra is, in my opinion, he is one of the most realistic characters in Kingdom Hearts in terms of how he deals with like his self-consciousness and his self-esteem, from like, failing the Mark of Mastery exam to being confused of like how to deal with his darkness, because he was never taught properly how to wield his darkness. And that in turn makes him an easy target for others. Is he gullible? Maybe a little, but I would more so call it being naive. And it's attributed to him being incredibly sheltered, being raised by Ericus, and we don't really know much about his backstory, which is something I would really love to see explored in the future of the series. But as far as we know, the Wayfinder trio pretty much has only been at the land of departure. And honestly, he's been the victim of being at the wrong place at the wrong time with a lot of these Disney villains. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts on that are.
Specifically him being sheltered, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, because I like to focus on the focal point for each. So where are we tackling first?
Perhaps, I mean, I don't know, what are your thoughts firsthand?
Okay.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
All right, so let me talk about my spiel when it comes to Terra, and then I'll focus on a couple of your points when it comes to how I feel about him. Now, I understand that a lot of people view Terra to be naive, or in lack of a better term, from my understanding, a little stupid, considering the choices he's made despite having an education which a lot of people consider slighted, which is fine considering that he doesn't know how to control his own darkness due to the teachings of Ericus. I will give that is a very much valid point, granted. But at the same time, I feel that this whole idea of Terra being too naive, or shouldn't be ridiculed for his actions, that I feel that whole idea, looking at Terra that way, kind of makes him exempt from the consequences of his actions. All right, that he was at the wrong place at the wrong time. He didn't know any better because of his teachings. I'm like, we're dealing with a character that has been confirmed by Nomura to be a full adult, right? We're dealing with a character that has grown up, as far as we know when it comes to the lore of Kingdom Hearts, to grow up alongside Aqua, who has the same exact teachings of under Ericus, right? And yet she was able to pick up on red flags. She was able to use critical thinking when it comes to certain situations. Was Terra in a bad spot due to him losing the Mark of Mastery exam? Probably, possibly, okay. But at the same time, what kind of a character does Terra have to not be happy for a friend that he said himself within the backstory of Birth by Sleep that we all share the same dream, right? Instead of focusing on Terra's victory, not Terra's victory, instead of focusing on Aqua's victory, he rather focused on his own loss. And I feel that's something that's not really okay for a character that claims to share a dream amongst his peers, amongst his friends, amongst especially someone who's basically a sister at this point. For him to sulk and be awfully selfish when it comes to him looking for a way out on how he failed the exam. How he failed the exam was clear cut, and the fact that Aqua was there as his parallel, as his antithesis, shows that, listen, you weren't ready to become a master. Instead of reflecting on that specific aspect, he's like, oh man, the darkness, where did it come from? And then that made him a so-called easy target for Xehanort. He could have reflected on himself when it comes to how I can do better, instead of what was done wrong to me. Sure, the darkness came out to be I would say an outside force due to Xehanort being there, but at the same time you would think that he was trained for this. And when it comes to the whole idea of him being sheltered along with that with Aqua, I don't want to think so they were too sheltered as a lot of people think. A lot of people believe they are when it comes to his age and his abilities and teachings. Because if he was so sheltered growing up on, the Land of Departure specifically, you would think that he would have more trouble to explore other worlds, but he was able to utilize Keyblade gliders, Keyblade armor, the lanes in between, to beautiful effect, going to lands such as Dwarven Woodlands, Castle of Dreams, China Dominion, no problem, because he's trained for this. Obviously so much so that he had to take the Mark of Mastery exam. He was ready for the Mark of Mastery exam. So I feel that he had a good basis on what the world should be, what the world needs from its defender, like Ericus, who came before him. So there's a lot of missing pieces to this puzzle when it comes to people saying that he doesn't deserve all of this ridicule, because I feel he's gone through all of that and trained through all of that to the point where he should be able to have critical thinking, where to the point where he should be able to focus on less of the negatives and more of the positives. But that's the way he was written, and that's my argument on the whole idea with Terra and why I don't like him. I'm not saying he's poorly written, I'm just saying he's written in the way I feel is, obvious to have people have some disdain for this character, being the first domino in the effect that led to, the entirety of Kingdom Hearts. That's where I'm coming from as a primer.
And that's totally fair. I mean, I definitely understand where you're coming from in the sense that Terra definitely could have, been supportive for Aqua when she, passed the Mark of Mastery exam. But I did notice he was self-reflective in the next cutscene. He was like, so what if there's darkness in me? I know I'm strong enough to hold it back. And also there's something that I wanted to note, a little bit off topic, but in terms of the game as a whole.
Yeah.
Birth by Sleep in general, it does a very poor job at conveying ambiguity. And this is going more in the topic of Xehanort being an obvious villain. The thing is, we know he's a villain. We from past games, we know the name Xehanort. We know he's the villain of the series. However, Terra and the gang, they only see him as Ericus's friend, a wise master who they look up to and respect. And so in the case of Terra, when he was feeling down about himself, which is a very, real human emotion to have, to be disappointed in yourself, Xehanort comes in and is offering him praise. He says, you're fine the way you are. There's nothing inherently wrong with darkness. And Xehanort states that light and darkness should be wielded in balance, which is true. It's honestly kind of like the meme of hold on, I It's have you heard of the meme of like heartbreaking, the worst person you know just made a great point?
Yeah,
That's literally
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's literally Xehanort. He made a great point. And that's the difference between, like Ericus's teachings and Xehanort's teaching. Xehanort was kind of correct in that sense. And so I don't blame Terra for trusting Xehanort in that sense, because all he sees him as is his master's friend. And his teachings are good, honestly, even better than Ericus in my opinion. And in terms of like, the Disney villains, he doesn't even help any of the Disney villains. I think a big misconception, especially with stealing Aurora's heart.
No,
Um,
that's completely granted. Yeah, that's a big misconception.
it's a huge misconception. And even the game states that he was controlled by Maleficent. They even later in the game made sure to note that when Zack was possessed by Hades, they did a flashback to the Maleficent scene to, connect the dots.
Right.
Neither of them had any control of their own like being. Yeah, that's sort of what I've got to say with that. What do you think?
So a couple of things. Like first, the point of Xehanort, we're gonna tackle that, and then the point of Disney villains, we're gonna tackle that. So the first point of Xehanort. So part of this can be considered conjecture, and that's completely fair and valid for those that want to view it as such. But once again, I have to go back to the idea that like like the thing about Birth by Sleep, there is a lot of ambiguity when it comes to like Xehanort's character and like who's evil, who's not, who's to be trusted, who's not. But at the same time, in my opinion, I feel Birth by Sleep sets up perfectly well, like I said before in my previous point, that Aqua is like right there to be set as a good parallel to Terra's misgivings. And even further, when in Kingdom Hearts, Riku is also another good parallel to like how Terra basically like messed up in Birth by Sleep. And that is the idea of like Aqua, having like a smidge of doubt goes a long way. Because I mean, I understand that okay, if Terra were to view this guy to be his master's best friend, who by the way he hasn't seen in a while, and then like, okay, so I mean, if this is the master's homie, I'm gonna take his word for it for the most part. But then let's take a couple of things into consideration. The last point is probably going to be the most biggest piece of conjecture. One, Terra's 20 years old, and like I understand, like, oh, he's naive, he's all this and stuff like that. But then once again, I bring back to the point of the whole parallel to Riku, where Terra, being a 20-year-old adult, blindly trusting this man he hasn't seen like ever, that is telling him teachings that goes like in stark contrast to what he's been raised on. I don't know about you or anyone else in the chat, but that would have been like, okay, something is off. And then when you compare that to Riku's character, who is like, a child of, once again, dealing with the darkness, never for a moment he trusted Maleficent. He's like, okay, listen, I don't trust y'all. I don't trust you. I don't trust Hook. I don't trust Ursula. I'm literally using y'all in order to get to Kairi, in order to make sure she's safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like Maleficent like try to butter him up same way Xehanort was trying to butter up Terra. It's like, oh, my dear boy, you're like a son to me. And Riku's like, listen, I don't know you, lady. And I felt like Riku could have been primed up to be more I would say vulnerable than Terra. Terra failed an exam. Riku lost his entire home and possibly his family and whatnot. I mean, sure, he was confident in the idea of never seeing his parents again in order to experience the outside world. But that's something to consider. That's one. Two is when Terra, of course, he's like, you can argue he's in a vulnerable spot, which is absolutely correct when Xehanort decides to like go after that. And sure, the idea of teachings of like light and darkness being in perfect balance and whatnot, because I mean, as we go on to learn within Kingdom Hearts, like if we were to eliminate one or over the other, then there will be a massive imbalance, which will lead to like possibly the implosion of the universe or whatever. So I mean, it's good to have both light and darkness in tandem, possibly in equal shares. But at the same time, this is the thing that made Terra lost it, like fail his exam. I keep saying lose, I keep saying lost, whatever. This is what made Terra fail his exam. If I'm gonna go off of what the guy, who by the way, Erica said there's always next time. I don't know why Terra was like in such a mood You know, if there's always next time and Aqua, you know, was able to ascend, I was like, okay, all right, I can do better, right? I mean, he learns that lesson way later down the line. Like, this guy's talking darkness, the same thing that caused him to fail his exam. Like, why would I buy into that? It's not like I had the idea that Xehanort was gonna, like, you know, proctor me, or Xehanort was gonna be in charge of my mark of mastery exam the next time around. Like, I should focus on what, you know, Ericus would teach me, which granted is a little dogmatic, but at the same time, I would think that he would have that kind of critical thinking to put 2 and 2 together. But, you know, if that happened, we wouldn't have Birth by Sleep, right?
That's fair.
And then the last piece, which is conjecture, you know, but there's just me looking at the whole scope of everything. You know, Terra's been with Ericus forever, right? And Ericus, like, was an old man already at the point where Xehanort visited him the first time, when he's like, hey, listen, you know, I kind of want to summon Kingdom Hearts because, you know, I feel that that's the answer to solving everything, right? Ericus didn't have his scars by then, right? And then Xehanort obviously like visited him, and then Xehanort left, and then Ericus happened to have scars. You know, this once again purely conjecture, but I would go as far as like, hey, you know, the last time this guy visited, you know, Ericus got scars. Like, you know, I don't know if this guy should be trusted, whatever. But at the same time, that's just a me thing. That's just conjecture. I just wanted to put that out there. So that's
Right.
The deal with Xehanort. Now, the deal with, like, Disney villains, you know, he did help Disney villains not to achieve their ultimate goal, but he did help them along the line. Maleficent is definitely not one of them, because that's all like a big misconception. It's like, oh, you know, Maleficent goaded Terra into taking Aurora's heart. It's like, no, there's a whole other spiel with that. But he did help Hook, and he did help Dr. Jumba in Neverland and in Deep Space. Of course, you know, at a certain point, it's like, oh man, nah, Hook, he ain't good. And then he did like, okay, Jumba, you need to stop whatever you're doing or whatnot. So that naiveness, yeah, whatever, that naiveness is like a big pervading factor within Terra's character, and people could argue it's like, oh, that's just who Terra is. I'm like, that for me, if that's who Terra is, that makes it worse. But I mean, like, he's been naive time and time again throughout that of Birth by Sleep, and I find that just incredibly frustrating, you know, especially given how everything ended. And, you know, especially considering that, like, oh, this man is naive, but he's also boastful, saying that, like, yeah, I'm going to be a Keyblade Master. I'm going to be a Keyblade Master. I'm like, you know, Keyblade Masters, I feel should be able to, you know, I don't know, think. But that is just my spiel when it comes to, like, Xehanort and Disney, the Disney villains part specifically. So, yeah, that's my bag. I'm throwing it over to you now.
Right. I wanted to touch on like him helping Dr. Jumba and Captain Hook. The thing with Dr. Jumba, he's like, yeah, I have this experiment 626 that they like is this like incredibly dangerous thing, and like this experiment that I've made. And then when Terra actually meets him, he's just a little guy that's like pretty harmless. Yeah, exactly. It's Stitch. Yeah. And the way that I viewed it is like that was a very good moment of paralleling Terra's character to Stitch, because this was after the whole thing in Radiant Garden when his friends he find out that Aqua was spying on him, which is like, you know, such a big like stab in the back for him. He is like, what the fuck? Why does the master like find the need to like have to spy on me? Like, I don't blame Terra for what he's exactly. I mean, the thing is, he could have definitely handled it better, the whole thing in Radiant Garden, but I also don't blame him for the way that he acted, because it's like, you know, if something like that happened to me, I would react very similarly to him. But again, back to the whole thing with Stitch, everyone sort of like views Terra as like this like darkness infested like person, I don't know, but he's just like Stitch. He's really just like a soft guy underneath that exterior. That's how I view it. But the whole thing with Captain Hook, that's the closest that he does come to helping a Disney villain. But here's the thing, I went and
put Peter Pan in his place.
But yeah, put Peter Pan in his place. And honestly, he's a shit eater. He definitely that was right. I'll say
no. You're completely 100% right. Yeah, Peter Pan. I can't stand Peter Pan. Like,
I can't stand him either.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when he came to Neverland, Captain Hook was attacked by Unverse, so of course he helped him, destroy the Unverse. And then he heard him talking about light. And that's exactly what Terra's looking for, because he's on the search for Vanitas, who is looking for the light as well. So of course he offers up, hey, I can help protect your, like, he doesn't even call it a treasure chest. He doesn't even know what that is. He's like, your box of light or whatever, I'll guard it for you, because he's trying to protect the light. That's my defense in that aspect. Back to where you were talking about Terra being like, kind of mopey about like failing the exam. I mean, how have you, like, if you've ever failed an exam that you really studied for and you thought you were gonna ace, you feel like shit. Like, I know that in my personal like experience, like I
Right.
feel like crap.
Okay.
And I really don't blame him for reacting the way he is. And I know he said there's better better luck next time, but in that moment you still feel kind of bad for that. And also, I went and looked at some of the like Xehanort reports. There's specifically Xehanort's letter to Ericus,
Yeah.
where he was invited to observe the Mark of Mastery exam. Actually, he was invited to observe the ascension to masterhood. But then in the letter, he suggests that he tests the Aqua and Terra in a traditional Mark of Mastery exam. So it was suggested by Xehanort. So that like, and he also brought up the fact that Terra has this darkness within him. So, and then they also deliberated at the end of the Mark of Mastery exam of whether they should pass or fail. This is all a part of Xehanort's big plan to sow seeds of doubt, or like seeds of doubt for Terra. He was supposed to be a master in the first place, but from what I like have observed, it really might have been just Xehanort that like said, "Oh, you fail." I think that was all Xehanort's talk, because later in one of the cutscenes, Erica says, "If I could have my way, I would name you master in a second." But like, I definitely see, like he does have darkness in him. That Xehanort was probably, or Ericus was probably, like, yeah, he should definitely keep that in check. And also I wanted to talk about how Xehanort has been influencing Terra. So Xehanort, in that scene at the end of like those first 3 worlds with the Disney princesses, they're in the Keyblade graveyard, and he's explaining to Terra how, or Terra's like, "I've seen what you've done in all these worlds. Explain yourself." And Xehanort is like, "I'm after Vanitas, this abomination that I created, that I extracted out of Ventus, because he had succumbed to darkness and I had no other choice." Like, he's like stretching the truth, but in a sense that is right. And he is like, I mean, Terra doesn't know that he's the one that's guiding Vanitas, but he, in a sense, like, is trying to find a common enemy between the two. And he's like, "Can you help me right this wrong that I have with Vanitas?" And honestly, like, I too would believe Xehanort if he were to explain that to me. I would be like, "Sure, I'm gonna go destroy Vanitas. I'm gonna help you, Xehanort." And that's sort of why I think that Xehanort's influence over Terra is very believable, because he keeps trying to find like common ground, a common enemy. That is, and Vanitas is responsible for the Unversed. Like, that's not a lie.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I get you, but then when you put it like that, I have another like point of contention for that, because okay, so get this. It's really, really, really good points that you're bringing up. But then, like, as soon as you were like talking about the whole common ground, common enemy that Xehanort's trying to find in order to bring Terra along with the group, along with the whole like spiel, like to influence him and whatnot. Rhelaza, like, this was the same man who literally, like, the first way he was able to clutch into Terra, he literally said, like, "You're fine as you are. Darkness can't be controlled. It can only be channeled, like darkness and light." And throughout the whole, before revealing about Vanitas, he was like, "Darkness and light should be in equal shares." So I mean, like, okay, if you're telling me all this spiel, then like, and then you're telling me like suddenly, "Oh yeah, I had to extract the darkness from Ventus." Like, didn't you tell me that if darkness is a lie, why would you do this? If like,
Well,
that would set up a red flag as well for me. I'm just like,
here's
wait,
the
excuse me?
thing.
Like,
He said that they should be wielded equally. However, Vanitas is pure darkness. He is
yeah,
there's
he's
an
pure.
imbalance in dark and light.
Right, he's pure
Because of
darkness when he
Vanitas.
took out Ventus, but if he was still in Ventus, like, obviously we know why he did it, like, in the spiel, but
Yeah.
explaining it to Terra, I would have been like, but you just said, like, why couldn't you just teach Ventus to, like, control it? Because you said, like,
He said
I
that
can
he
be a
had
master. Like,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, yeah,
But
you're good.
he said that he succumbed to darkness, so he had no other choice but to do that. That's sort of
sounds like
that's what he said in the
propaganda to
cutscene.
me.
What do you mean he said that in the cutscene?
I know, but I'm just saying, I'm just saying, like, that just, like, like, from my perspective, I just feel like there's so many red flags that literally could have just, like, tipped off Terra, but Terra just kept going for those breadcrumbs. You know, I would have been like, come on, like, Terra, like, obviously I know Xehanort's a villain, but I mean, like, if I were to, like, you know, blanket that and just like, okay, Xehanort's trying to be a good guy, he says this, okay, if Terra wants to believe that, fine, but then he goes on to say something like that with the whole Vanitas extracting from Ventus. Oh, he succumbed to darkness. Like, so you believe those that succumb to darkness, something that you say cannot be destroyed, can only be channeled. So if someone succumbs to darkness, like I almost did, you're telling me like that they're worthless and then they need to be purged of that? That doesn't seem like something I like that I would roll with. So that's one take when it comes to the whole Xehanort Venus Ventus thing. But then the other take when it came to, you know, Xehanort possibly, you know, pushing for, like, you know, the Mark of Mastery exam, the letter 100%. But when they went to go, you know, delegate with, like, Ericus and Xehanort to go delegate about, like, who passes, who fails, or whatnot, you know, at the same time, that whole visual cue that we got from, like, you know, Terra going against Aqua, he was obviously distracted by the fact that he had the darkness within him and whatnot. And I feel like, you know, even with Ericus's dogmatic view of light, I feel like Control would have, you know, won the day if, you know, Terra was able to control the darkness. Because that obviously, I mean, obviously, you know, Riku is like a different case because it wasn't the Mark Mastery exam wasn't done by Ericus, it was done by Yin Sid. But that's how he ascended to master. You know, Riku was able to get full control, right? So I don't want to give Terra the benefit of the doubt that Ericus legitimately said. Terra, like, I don't want to believe that Ericus was like, okay, yeah, they both passed. And then Xehanort's like, nah, Terra doesn't pass. And then Ericus like, okay, man, I'll believe you. Like, we're homies. So I don't want to believe it's that. I want to believe it's like, like Ericus brought it up. No, Xehanort brought it up. And Ericus like, yeah, I noticed that too. I don't think he's ready. Because if I were to make him master and then he, like, you know, loses control of the darkness, I'm like, that'll look pretty bad. So that's on that point. Now, the last point when it came to the, you know, whole idea of failing the exam, and I definitely understand, like, you know, seeing your own experiences within Terra, and I completely understand that. But when it comes to my perspective, I feel that a big, like, part of the big variable within the equation is that, you know, this is not an exam he took by himself, nor was an exam taken within that of 30 students or 40 students or, like, you know, a classroom. This was an exam between him and, like, his best friend, his sister that he grew up with, like since, like, I don't want to say day one because we don't know when exactly they met, like, you know, kids, whatever. But if I was in a situation where I failed an exam, like, that's the whole parallel with, like, Sora's character in Dream Job Distance. If I was in an exam where I failed and my best friend was able to pass, like obviously, like, it has to dial to the moment where, like, would I be genuinely happy for them even though I failed? It depends on the moment, but I feel that I would. But even beyond that, I know for a fact within, like, myself, I wouldn't want to sour the experience of my friend's accomplishment just because I failed. Sure, I'll feel bad about it later to my own self, and then I'll probably confide in them later down the line. And it's like, hey, can you help me find a way to pass this exam because I wasn't able to pass, right? But in that moment of victory, I would not want to take that away from them, like for any reason. So that when you brought that up, I'm like, that's me. Because, like, I understand that you see yourself in Terra, like, in that failure, but in that specific instance with just Terra and Aqua, because I'm always considered of, like, you know, of Aqua being there as his parallel. So that's where I would come from if I were in that situation.
Right.
Yeah, but then again, like Jeff Fire makes a really good point in the chat. Not everyone can be Sora, and that's completely fair and valid.
Yeah,
That is completely
exactly.
fair and valid. You know,
Sora in
yeah.
general, I find him to be like literally the best protagonist of like anything really, because he's just like the most ordinary like
That's the
character,
beauty of
technically
him. That
speaking.
is the
And that is the beauty of
yeah,
him. That's why I love Sora as a protagonist. But again, not everyone can be Sora and be
exactly.
happy for them. That's what makes him, you know, be set apart from you know, from Terra.
Right.
And the whole thing, like you always refer back to Riku because the two, like Terra and Riku, have had very similar arcs.
Mhm.
I think, like, because Birth by Sleep is such a small game, because they had to fit 3 different stories within a single game.
Mhm.
Terra's arc is way too rushed. If he was
Right.
given the luxury of like having his arc stretch out through a mainline game into like a few more side games, I feel like it would have definitely come across more realistic and more like, what's the word, like relatable, I guess. I don't know, because like when I first played Birth by Sleep like ages ago, I didn't like Terra like you. I thought that he was pretty shitty.
Mhm.
But over time, as I've grown older and as I keep replaying these games, I'm just thinking that it's the fault of the writing and the fault of like being a small game. But like if he was given that, like, you know, more time stretched throughout his arc, I feel like he definitely would be considered more of a lovable character to more people. But that's just the fault of the writing, unfortunately.
Right. Now, my whole spiel on Terra's character, because I played Birth by Sleep, like, I wouldn't say a million, like, I played Birth by Sleep a lot of times. And, you know, there's a whole, like, idea with Terra, and I made this, like, really interesting point on a stream this week leading up to this. It's like, Terra is kind of like League of Legends, where, like, I don't like League of Legends as the game. I used to play the hell out of League of Legends, but I don't like League of Legends as a game. However, everything that League of Legends produces outside of League of Legends is really good. Like Arcane is super good. The music is really good. The character designs are really good, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And that for me, like Terra is like that. Like for me, like him as a character, I don't like him as a character, and I got reasons which I'm about to follow up with. But his theme, great. His weaponry, every keyblade except Darkgnaw, amazing. His
Agreed. Agreed.
his playstyle, Terra is super fun to play. Terra is
He
extremely
is.
fun to play, right? And like, you know, just because I don't like the character, I'm not going to take away from, like, you know, his accomplishments or identities. Terra is actually one of the most powerful characters in all of Kingdom Hearts, right? And I'm not going to take that away from him just because I don't like the character, right? And of course, we we all know in the chat, he has a very nice ass. So like, you know, Terra's got a lot of good things going for him. Just like,
Yeah,
but the thing is,
exactly.
for me, his character is just extremely frustrating. And, you know, hate is a strong word, but, you know, I hate Terra. And, you know, when you keep bringing up the idea of Terra being relatable or realistic, relatable, I will give you that. Realistic, I will debate that, because I don't think it's realistic for someone to like be goated that much. You know, like, sure, you can bring up all the points of like him possibly being sheltered, of him, you know, being mopey because he lost his exam, but I could bring up so many points that counteract those other points on the idea of like how naive or how, you know, gullible he is. I'm like, come on, like, you know, like fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, fool me 3 times, fool me 4 times. I'm like, Terra, come on, brother, right? But and then like the whole idea is that, you know, sure, like I will agree that his arc was rushed, and then it's the writing that makes him viewed to be so hateable in like terms of other characters, or people that are digesting this characters, when comparing to like Riku, Aqua, because Aqua had a way bigger arc. Riku, man, Riku, like, it's Riku, like, look at him, he's all over the place, right?
Right,
And
of course.
I will give you that, but at the same time, you know, I don't feel that he should be free of ridicule because of his actions, because doing so makes it like, you know, of course, fictional character, guys, ladies and gentlemen, fictional character, right? But at the same
Yeah.
time, you know, if I were to apply this to someone like I were to come into contact in real life, you know, 100%, like, that would be inexcusable by, you know, any means, in terms of like, oh, but you have to excuse like the way this person was brought up. I'm like, but like, okay, I get that, maybe like the first few times or like repeatedly, nah, man, like I don't think this person should be free from ridicule when it comes to like the consistent, like it may not be as constant, but the consistent blunders he's had, and considering like we tie that in to his own underlying personality, like I gotta be completely honest with you, Rhelaza, like the fact that like he was mopey about where the darkness came from and how gullible he is, but then there's moments in Birth by Sleep where he's literally just like, thinking and being analytical, and I'm like, why couldn't you do this before? Like it's frustrating, like at points where he just sits and talks to himself, and then like he's able to like, okay, yeah, he was able to get Jeopardy, cool, right? But I'm like, why couldn't you do this before? So it's like that big give and take, and at the same time, like like I said before, at a lot of times he's very boastful, he's very confident in his abilities, even though like, oh, he's so confident in his abilities, yet he took that knockdown when he couldn't like pass an exam. For me, that's like, yo, you can't have your cake and eat it too, man. Like sure, that's like you said, realistic, fine, yeah, I'll give you that realistic part, because there are people that are like that 100%, going back, sure. But at the same time, I really feel that should not be an excuse to like his character, because like excusing that just makes like, oh, everything that Terra's done leading up to Kingdom Hearts 1, Kingdom Hearts 2, the fallout to Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind, all that stuff, oh, it wasn't really his fault. I'm like, sure, he was goated in certain aspects, but he was completely in control, except for Maleficent. He was completely in control of his actions, right? And like he should be,
sorry.
he should see that. No, I was wrapping up. That was it.
I just wanted to say, I have a question. What are the actions that you keep talking about with Terra that are inexcusable?
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's get it. All right, a lot of people will argue that this is a domino effect and stuff, but him like leading the charge in finding what's going on with the Unverse and stuff, especially when he's like in a very emotional state after Xehanort like coddled him a little bit and whatnot. He was in the not in the right state of mind, and then of course Ventus like going after him. People argue that Vanitas planted that idea in his head, but at the same time, Ventus was not ordered to go out and do Aqua and Terra's mission, and obviously not because Ericus knows the truth about him, being a quote-unquote primordial source of the Keyblade, right? So without that idea and without that, I would say, notion, if you want to go all the way to where Radiant Garden, fine, because they don't reconvene until Radiant Garden, right? He should have known that his actions are effectively putting, Ventus in potential danger, because Ventus was not up for Mark of Mastery. Like that was made completely clear in the beginning of the game. He's like, oh, Ventus is like, yeah, I want to be a master too, but you weren't ready at this point. You are not here to do the mission with me and Aqua, right? You should go home. Aqua was the one that kept telling him like, oh, he should go home. And then Jens is like, hey, you were supposed to go home. What are you doing there, right? So, because like Terra was so enamored with the idea that 1, he failed the Mark of Mastery exam. 2, Xehanort is like, show me the true way. 3, Aqua was told to like, spy on me and whatnot. I'm on my own, stay like, don't follow me or whatnot. I understand he was in his feelings. We all are, but like that is an action that literally led to massive consequences when, that whole encounter with Ericus and Ventus, and then Terra coming to save him and whatnot. And then Terra coming in to save Ventus. I understand that he had to quell Ericus's, rage at that point, but like even after he sent out sent out Ventus into a lane between to make sure he's safe, like I would have eased back a little bit, and then correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Dark Impulse was the only command style that was available during that fight, right?
It was.
So that's telling me that Terra kind of took the brakes off on the person he deems to be his father, right?
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
But how can you blame Terra for what happened to Ventus? Because you claim this is a domino effect, but like you can't blame a person for that. in my opinion, like sure, like is in the Mark Mastery exam when he should have like when Aqua was like go to your room, it's not safe. Terra's like a big brother figure to Ventus. If like it made sense for
Oh
him to
man,
be
that
like he's been
that
training just as hard as all of us,
that
or
meant
just as hard as us,
I'm,
you
I'm
know?
I'm sorry, but that even strengthens my point a little bit because I'm thinking, damn, Terra. Oh no, I don't want to use that word. Terra just like, like, yeah, it's okay, Ventus, go off and do your thing. It's like, nah, man. Like, if you're the real big brother looking out for Ventus and making sure, like, hey, we're all gonna, this isn't. Ventus being out in the world, that isn't training. That isn't for the Mark of Mastery exam. That isn't, I mean, it is because it did make him stronger. But I mean, like, in his viewpoint and what he's been taught with Ericus, that's not part of the, what's the word? I don't want to say rhetoric. That's not part of the, God, I'm brain farting. It's not part of the, study notes or whatever. I'm just gonna use study notes. That's not part of the study notes, so why is this man like running around? Like, my first instinctful thought, if I were to like, be Big Bird to like another character or another person or anything like that, I'm like, listen, your safety means more than me and my feelings, right? But like, that's why I feel like Terra is being incredibly selfish at certain points throughout Birth by
Well,
Sleep.
here's the thing. What Terra is trying to do throughout the course of the game is to keep Ven safe from Vanitas. He's trying to go after Vanitas. That's the whole thing. Like, sure, he is not Mama Bird like Aqua is saying, go
Right.
home. His intentions throughout the entire game is to destroy Vanitas so that he doesn't hurt Ven. That's like to hurt Ven, that's part of the reason why.
Right.
But all that he's doing is to help his friends. He's trying to protect them. He's trying to save the world from the unversed, So I wouldn't say that he's being reckless with Ventus and like not considering him, because he is definitely considering him.
Well, I mean, like, you could say that's consideration for his friends for like the whole mission, like, taking out the universe and whatnot. But I felt like it's just the actions he takes, like, especially after raiding guard. It's just like, sure, he's thinking about like, we're still friends, we're still all this, but I mean, like, he said to himself, like, I'm on my own now, like, just stay put. It's just me, myself, and I at this point. I'm like, Terra, like, you have to understand he did it with the best intentions. And then, sure, it's after the point, but then when they reconvened at the Keyblade graveyard, just like, Terra's like, you're right. So I mean, like, of course, like, if you want to make these like, discussional points when it comes to like, how you view Terra as a character, and then like viewing this, and I'm sorry that there was a phone call I was getting, and I'm putting that on mute.
No worries.
But I, like, the one grace I give Terra personally, this is just for me, and once again, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm saying and what Rhelaza is saying, like, this isn't dogma, this isn't like the one-to-one truth and whatnot. Like, your view on characters are subjective. I just think Terra is this, and then she just thinks Terra is that and whatnot. But the one grace I give Terra is that, a little too late, but still, like, he was able to realize the fact that it's like, man, I've been going through it. I have been responsible for a lot of things, but that's like that's after the fact. And I'm like, sure, okay, you realize that now, but I mean, you still did a lot of stuff, right? And then, I'm not gonna lie, as much disdain I have for Terra, when they did what's the word?
Reconvene?
Not reconvene, but like not reconnect, but
Reunite.
Thank you. That, yes. When they did reunite at the end of Kingdom Hearts 3, I did cry. Like, that was like that I'm like, yo, like, Shimamura did not have to remix Destiny's Union, and like the part where it's like, Terra tearing up is like, you found me just like you promised, like that.
Yeah.
I cried at that. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like, because like
I was sobbing.
As much as I don't like Terra, I'm like, I understand their friendship. I understand, like, he's a very big focal point of the story, and especially with the Birth by Sleep trio. But I just like, it's just, the end of my the end all be all of my take on Terra is that, like, my disdain is bred from the idea that he should be accountable for his actions, right?
That's fair.
And
To me,
and I'm not saying he got scot-free with. I'm not saying he got away with scot-free. No, he suffered for 10 years. He was like Xehanort's vessel. But then, like another case in point, like I'm gonna give you the floor right after this point. Like just something that really pissed me off was that when in Remind, where he called upon Riku to watch the Land of Departure while they went to go like into the Land of Darkness, the Realm of Darkness. He's like, oh yes, like here you are, a true Keyblade master. Now I've got nothing else to teach you. I'm like, bro, don't do that.
Yeah, that was such a weird moment.
No,
That's so weird.
I hated that so much.
That was a weird scene. He definitely like could have done more with that. I think that just no more in the writing. That's all I can attribute that to.
Because I was like, one, that makes you feel up yourself a lot more than you should, especially with everything after everything you've done. And then two, that nullifies everything Riku's done for himself. So I'm like, man, bro. But that's my spiel on Terra, right? And then when it comes to other actions and stuff like that, there's all the individual actions he took that like put other people in danger, which people can debate. Like people are like, oh yeah, Aurora is like, no, I'm not counting Aurora because that definitely was not his fault. But then, like literally fighting Peter Pan, knowing that Cinderella
Peter Pan deserved that.
Knowing that Cinderella was a princess of heart, yet, like, okay, you want to believe in your ability, fine. But he did put her in danger by trying to escort her to the ball, even though he knew Unverse was around.
Actually, he was the one who told her, wait here while I clear the way. And she was like, can I please go with you? I really want to go to the ball. And then that was her insisting.
Yeah, but then he let up. I would have been like, no.
He was like, are you sure? And she was like, well, you were the one that told me to stay strong. And I mean, hey, she was the one that was taking his words. You can't blame him when she was the one that was insisting.
I'm just saying, I would have been like, full stop. If I understand, like the Princess of Heart, they all got spunk. They all like the Disney princesses. They all like are very strong women. And I'm like, yo, you are literally the foundation of what keeps this world like alive. I don't know if I want to risk that. Like, come on. So. And then, like, he did the whole bowing thing. He's like, oh, I like, go on ahead. And I understand, like, that's the dream and whatnot. But I mean, like, at the same time, like, Cinderella, couldn't you, like, yo, let him do his thing. You're gonna go to the ball. Like, relax. Like, take 2 seconds.
Yeah, I know. That's just Cinderella being Cinderella.
Right.
But for me...
Go ahead.
Sorry, did you have...
No. No, I was throwing it back to you, yeah.
So for me, why I really like Terra as a character, what makes him appealing to me are his flaws. I personally, for me, I enjoy characters that are flawed, but like have like their redemptions. That's sort of what makes like Terra really interesting for me. Like all of the flaws that you mentioned about Terra are true. However, I just think that gives him so much nuance. That's just my own like personal like taste in characters. That's why like I really like villains in that sense. That's why I like Xehanort in that sense. He has flaws.
Xehanort.
I love Xehanort a lot. But like Xehanort and Terra are obviously very different. That's just what I was saying about Terra.
Right, but like, and I definitely get that 100% because like I'm all for nuance because I love flawed characters. Like when we deal with a character that's like has no fault or gets overly busted for no reason, Ichigo from Bleach. I want to say that, the characters in Kingdom Hearts, all of them have faults. Like we got Aqua dealing with her insecurities and post-traumatic, stress when it comes to, what she did with the Realm of Darkness. Ventus is very kid-like, very childish and whatnot. Roxas, I feel Roxas has the biggest emotional range out of all Kingdom Hearts characters. And I feel that that's very poetic considering that he's a nobody. Like he gets very into his feelings. He gets extremely reckless into his feelings. But as reckless as Roxas gets, he doubles down and he stays true to like, okay, if I'm out here to do this, I'm doing this, right? I can do this in tears. I can do this in madness. I can do this in happiness, but I'm doing this. I'm like, okay, that's Roxas. Sora, I love Sora, but we all know he's dumb as dirt, right? So like he's
fair enough.
Yeah. And Riku, many faults, but I feel like when comparing Riku to Terra, and of course you can't say that I can't for those in chat, you can't say I can't compare Riku to Terra because I mean that's the main thing, right? When I compare Riku to Terra, like Riku has done so much in the time he's had as a child, that really, goes into his faults. He understood his faults. He did the redemption, and he was able to find, finally find peace with himself and peace with the darkness in order to become a master. And I felt like Riku's arc throughout Kingdom Hearts has to be the most beautiful and complete arc in the entire series, right?
Totally.
And we can talk about Kairi, we can talk about Shion, Naminé, and stuff like that, and they all have their own individual arcs, some shorter, some rushed, and whatnot. But when it comes back to Terra specifically, for me, it's just that, it's all the red flags. It's all of the the gullibility, if that's even a word. The gullibility to his actions that he should have been able to steer right or steer left. And it's just like you're this man's feeding way too much into the hands of other people and whatnot. And I understand that in the moment of weakness, like where he he failed the Mark of Mastery exam. Yeah, he failed, but going on, he should have come to realize this, because aside from Riku was obviously in very, very angry feelings throughout that of Kingdom Hearts 1. He was doing some very vile things. But at the same time, there goes the argument of the whole, do the ends justify the means? That's a whole other argument for another show or whatnot. But he was doing this all for Kairi's sake and whatnot. And of course, his best friend Sora, he was willing to bop him to hell and back if it was to save Kairi, because what was fed to him by the villains and whatnot. But the whole, I would say, hypocritical part of Terra is that he was doing all of this, like you say, for the light. He was eliminating Unversed. He was doing this all for the sake of the worlds. But at the same time, he was doing a lot of actions that he should have, figured out, before the fact, or at least one step into the fact that this would be very detrimental to his mission, very detrimental to the worlds, and very detrimental for, peace of all and whatnot. And then believing people he's just met, and believing people that had, obvious, straight up obvious alternative motives, without thinking about the actions that could have been caused if he decided to take this route. And then like you said earlier, when he finally finds Stitch, maybe Stitch isn't that bad. Or finally finding Snow White after the evil queen is like, oh, there's the light, and I'm not gonna cut her heart, of course not, who does that, right? It's that big case in point that I feel that was kind of the point of his writing, where it's just okay, yeah, you're supposed to see Terra's fall from grace, and the way he was able to fall from grace, it was not completely on the fault of those that want to see him fall from grace, but to the point of his character. It was the combination of that fact. And that was okay, I get it that this is the plan, but at the same time, he was reckless, he was feckless, and then Xehanort even described him as much, and then he knew, because it happened, right? The feckless use that became my new vessel, right? So that's my idea.
But here's the thing. You keep saying that not Xehanort. Terra keeps believing the first person he meets. But there's another character that does that. Sora. Sora believes everyone that he just meets as well, and he wants to help them too. But that's where I was saying Terra's at the wrong place at the wrong time. He was literally trying to help everyone he met, but unfortunately for his case, a lot of the characters that he did meet were villains. I'm just saying you can't blame Terra for trusting the first person he meets when Sora does the exact same thing.
But I want to argue that I can, because there's two differences to Sora and Terra. Sora and Terra. Sora and Terra. I was wait, am I saying the names wrong? All right. For Sora, he's a child. So I want to give him that gullibility. I will give him that naiveness. I will give him that benefit of the doubt because he's a child. And then two, on Sora's character is even though he believes a lot of people and he's willing to make friends with everybody, he still has that shadow and smidge of doubt, especially with Dream Drop Distance, when he comes to the contact with Frollo. It's I'm not feeling this guy. This guy's looking kind of wild or whatnot. And when people are telling him, it's maybe you should use this Keyblade to do this or to do that, and it's this Keyblade is not meant for that, so he has that level of doubt, especially when it came to the Disney villains, even though he would still go out of his way to try and save the Disney villains and try to find a moment of peace with everyone. And that, I feel that's the beauty of Sora's character, aside from Terra's character or whatnot. And then two, is that, you know, Sora, that's Sora straight off of upbringing that he had without the Keyblade. He grew up in Destiny Islands. He grew up with his friends. He grew up with the most cherishable heart that saw the light in everything. He saw the good in everything. He saw everything is shiny. Then he got the Keyblade after his island went to the no-no zone or whatnot, and he just went forward with that. Terra is an adult who had training, who knew what light and darkness was. He knew what the land of departure was in terms of like being a coveted land. He knew what a Keyblade was. He was training with it for God knows how long, and he was given a mission. So I mean, like, there's a lot of differences, like when it comes to like the whole reductive sense of like, oh, but Sora also believed everyone he saw, just like Terra. But Terra had all this in his pocket, where Sora just went right out the gate. That's my debate on that.
I would argue against that because there were cases where when Terra didn't believe every single Disney villain that he met. Like with prime example is with Hades. He was sus of Hades. You can't say he was all trusting with him. There was a very like specific moment where Hades was like, yeah, you can do it. And he was like, okay, and like pushes him away. Like he doesn't trust like that. He still has like he still has that barrier. And also pertaining to Terra's age, he was like in his lower 20s or like 20, 21.
Yeah, he's like 20 on the dot, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, he's still kind of like a child in a sense. Like I'm in my early 20s right now, and I barely consider myself to be an adult. I still am very much like immature in a lot of ways, and so is Terra. He's younger than me, and like he is definitely prone to and like validated in the sense of like not being mature and not making adult decisions because he's only barely an adult, and it all can go back to him being like sheltered in that sense. He hasn't ever been treated like an adult, you know?
Well, the argument I give to that point is like, okay, sheltered. That I feel that's debatable considering his upbringing as a Keyblade wielder. But you know, like, you argue that should he be making decisions or should he have the capacity to make decisions even though he's at a relative young adult age? I feel he is because Ericus was ready to name him master. Ericus was ready to ascend him before Xehanort said, like, maybe they should take a test, right? Of course, that was for his own machinations, but going off the lore within Birth by Sleep, Ericus was ready to make this man a Keyblade master. And I feel like, you know, Ericus, as old as he is, as much as he's seen through, especially the underlying context that we're getting from Dark Road and whatnot, I want to assume that, like, hey, listen, if Ericus thought this man was mature enough, ready enough to be named master, then, you know, there's the guy who basically raised him. Like, okay, he sees that, like, he has that level of maturity, but I guess not. And ladies and gentlemen, Birth by Sleep. So that's my like spiel on that. I mean, of course, the argument could be said that, like, you know, Ericus' dogmatic views on light. You know, he didn't train Terra, right, and whatnot, but then the whole idea of the parallels with Aqua being right there, Aqua ascended to master. Aqua was able to, like, you know, think for herself. Aqua was able to do all stuff. I'm not saying Aqua's without fault because there are times where she, like, you know, let up and ease back a little bit, but at the same time, you know, Aqua, I felt, was there to highlight everything that Terra wasn't about, and then Aqua became master while Terra didn't, and they both got, and that's the variable, and those are the two variables in the controlled setting, right? They were both raised with the same view, the same teachings as Ericus, yet Aqua was able to ascend while Terra wasn't. And then that's, I feel, highlights why Terra, you know, has all these faults and should be accountable. You know,
yeah, and Terra I feel like accountable.
And I feel like Aqua's like extremely mature too. You know, sure, she gets flustered when like Zach asks her out on a date, but I mean, like, you know, in my opinion, Aqua's hella mature. And then we have like Terra here that, you know, you argue is a bit sheltered. That's where I'm coming from.
I don't know. You mentioned how like Terra, it was like mature enough to become a master. Sora and Riku also went through the Mark of Mastery exam as children too. It's not like it isn't really a matter of maturity.
But true. But at the time when they entered the Mark of Mastery exam, they literally saved the world from 2 world-ending events. Terra is just like, hey man, I grew up. Hooray, you know. So I'm gonna give you the floor for one final part because we are actually running on time right now. So I'm gonna give you the floor for any lasting final thoughts. And remember, guys, legit, this wasn't like a win-lose thing. This was just an analysis on the character for the fifth
Oh yeah,
dimension.
totally.
So,
Yeah, neither of us won or lost. This is just us talking about Terra.
right.
It's all chill.
So, go for it. The floor is yours, and this will be the final thought.
Yeah. So I definitely understand like all the points he made, and a lot of them are correct. And to me, a lot of his flaws, like I mentioned, that's what makes him so interesting of a character. And I don't know, he's very neat. Like he has his low points and everything, but his high points just make it so worth it, in my opinion. Like, I don't know. I've talked a lot about Terra already, and I'm sort of brain farting a little bit, but I don't know. Yeah, I just really like him, and he's got a nice ass. You can't say he doesn't.
You are 100% correct.
Yep.
But to end off that point, I completely think it's valid to see nuances within Terra and Terra's character. Like I said before, I never thought he was a badly written character, but at the same time, my whole idea is that I very much have disdain for this character for what he's did, for what he should be accountable for, and for his writing. But I feel that's all at fault for his writing. If I feel like Kingdom Hearts 3 and Remind literally started the path to his redemption, and I might see Terra in a better light, down the line, especially after what he did with like Riku's like, oh man, I got nothing left to teach you. Hopefully. But that is where I stand, and people in my chat already know where I stand with that. But I want to thank everyone in the chat for coming to another explosive episode of the Fifth Dimension. And I'd like to thank Rhelaza for being here. Thank you so much. It's been a blast, honestly. This was like so much fun.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Thank you for having me. I really had a great time.
Of course. Now, before I toss you all to the wind, the Fifth Dimension is not only a show, it's also a Twitch team that I run of aspiring content creators that I want to give highlight to when it comes to their energetic personalities. And today we're going to go ahead and raid Backstory Ben, who's currently streaming Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. And I saw a lot of people, draw comparisons from Anakin Skywalker to Terra. That's a whole other bag that I'm so down to get into, but not tonight. So until the next stream, I hope you guys had an amazing time, and I hope you guys have an amazing time in Backstory Ben's stream. Until the next one, this has been HMK and Rhelaza. Next time, dive deep, be brave, and enter the Fifth Dimension. We'll check you guys later.